Well, let me extend a welcome to all of you that are listening to our podcast. Thanks for listening. And then all of you that are watching online, thanks for watching and joining us this morning. And then for you in the room, thank you for being here. We have been in this conversation we started last week called Let Us Pray. And that's how you say it. It's not let us pray, it's a question. Let us pray, like we're asking, is that what we're going to do now? Yes, it is. We are reconsidering an ancient practice in a modern world. And so last week, if you were just joining us, we opened the floor because we do sermons together around here a lot because I believe there's collective wisdom in the room. The days of one guru having all the answers is well behind us. And for all of you that spoke, thank you. My goodness, you probably weren't planning to be the speaker on Sunday morning, but you did, and you did well. All right. So thank you all for sharing. We just kind of talked about all the problematic ways that prayer has been used or abused in our culture, and why maybe some of us come from religious backgrounds where when you even talk about prayer, it's like that's kind of the word, I don't know. Yep, I understand that. Many of you are deconstructing your faith, you're reconstructing your faith, and as we do that, we use this phrase that Ken Wilber uses: transcend and include. And so you don't just throw everything out that you were handed as a child. All right. I love watching people grow up. I do. One of my favorite things to do as a human. I love every stage. I want you to know that. I love some stages I prefer more than others. All right. And if you're a parent here, you know that world, right? Like some of you are around the 2 and 3 year old and you're like, can we move on past this stage? Is this the demonic stage of growing up? All right. Yeah, I know. I love all the stages. I want you to know, just if it brings you any hope, I'm almost certain no one terrorized society more than I did as a 3 year old. All right. So, and I became a pastor. All right. So your kid's going to be the Pope. You're going to be fine. All right. But I love watching people grow up, and every stage is so precious. And that stage is a stage. So if it brings you any consolation, it won't last forever. It will pass. And then you're going to maybe miss those moments, right? I know for me, like I've been through stages, even in my own spiritual development, where I used to look back at my upbringing and go, oh. And sometimes I remember getting to a stage where I'd look back in embarrassment, like, I can't believe I believe those things, right? I'm at a place now, I use that phrase transcend and include, where I realize, no, you've heard me say this before, I love all of the stages before me. I love all the earlier versions of who I have been. I embrace every bit of them. And one of the things that I'm learning is not everything I was handed was unhealthy. I would actually just like to say this, and especially if they're watching, I don't know if they are. My parents did an amazing job raising me. All right. And guys, maybe can we just stop the sermon here? Maybe you need to call mom and dad today and actually say those words. Now, if you're here and you're like, they did a horrible job, don't call. All right. Don't call. Just go home and have a drink. All right. Um, but maybe you're here and you just like, can I tell you what I think humans long for are those words, right? So like as a son or daughter, maybe you long for these words, I'm proud of you, or maybe you long for these words like I admire you or I love you, right? I will tell you, it's true. I don't think those needs ever change the older you get. And you want to talk about something magical when you look your father in the eye and just say, you've been a good dad. That does something in the soul of a human. All right. So for me, when we talk about this transcend and include, one of the things we have to talk about is what are we going to bring with us? So not everything was unhealthy. So it's like as we transcend into new stages of consciousness, we say, what were the healthy things that the generation before us gave us? And are we going to take that with us? So we're asking questions like, is prayer one of the things we bring with us? Is prayer an empty ritual that just existed for like a magical, mythical stage of consciousness? Or is there a way to approach prayer and talk about prayer that maybe is different than how we were handed it? And so here's the fundamental question: can prayer still be a meaningful, helpful, and transformative practice for us in 2024 as evolved, like deconstructed, reconstructed spiritual people? What do we do with this ancient practice that has been passed down to us? And then I think it can get even more personal. Do you pray? And I ask that question not as in any guilt. So please hear me, okay? This series is not, I want to be clear on this, is not about shaming you for not praying or shaming you for still praying. If you find the practice helpful to your own growth and maturity, keep doing it. If you find the practice unhelpful for your own growth and maturity, don't do it. All right? But I have to ask, if you think the practice is still meaningful, here's how you might can know. Do you pray? And what does that prayer look like? Are they quick prayers? Fast prayers? Do you find yourself only praying before you get pulled over by the officer? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, is anyone else in the room like me? Do you tend to talk to the divine in moments of crisis only, right? Where something happens, you get the report. It's like, oh God, I need you. Or, and I can't explain this to you, but every time you top the hill in the car. You've been doing great, but you top the hill, and sure enough, Waze didn't pick up the state trooper. Do you know what I'm talking about? Because I have Waze, and Waze tips you off. You familiar with this? People, y'all need to get in on this, all right? Save yourself money, give it to the church, not to the officer, okay? I have Waze, so it tips me off if there's an officer, right? It'd be like, police ahead in 1 mile. And he's like, you start backing off, right? And so, but you top the hill, and then he didn't pick it up. And sure enough, these guys are clever. They hide in these amazing spots. And I want to say this too. This is for your own benefit and only for those who live in the state of Georgia. If you travel, this is getting personal, but just hang with me. If you travel 75 south, are you familiar with this interstate system? All right, 75 south. This is just a heads up for all of you. This is worth coming to. You put this in your notes this morning, okay? When you hit a little town called Tifton, Georgia, are you familiar with Tifton, Georgia? I want to guarantee you there will be police on the interstate on 75 in Tifton, Georgia. I don't know who Tifton officers are, but I would just like to say, wow, you gave out a lot of Christmas gifts over the year, all right? They really love their job. Every time I've gone up and down 75, there has always been friends waiting for me there, all right? Now, all of that said, it's not uncommon. My heart starts racing, and I start saying things like this. And it doesn't matter. I know it's silly. I know it's magical, mythical. I also know it's utterly ridiculous, and it's full-on hypocrisy. But I will say things innate within me. God, if you get me off this one, I promise you, I'm not going to do this ever again. And here's what's so weird. Our capacity to forget. Do you know what I'm talking about? I mean, have you ever noticed this? Like, you can have a miracle on Monday, and then Tuesday you're like, life is terrible, right? It's like our capacity to forget is astonishing to me. It's astonishing. I mean, I think about it, even the children of Israel. You're familiar with these Israelites? It's like the biblical narrative is all about the Israelites. This is no joke. The Israelites, do you know what happened to the Israelites? An astonishing miracle. God heard the cry of the oppressed, stepped in, parted the Red Sea, right? Parted it. They walk through it. This is the story. Liberation. It's a miracle. Pharaoh's gone. They've been set free. Day 1, after getting set free, they wake up hungry and they look at Moses. And the text says they complained and said, you brought us out here to die, God. My God, how quick we are to forget what just transpired yesterday. Okay? Now, all of that said, do you pray? What does your prayer look like? You only pray in time of crisis? Last week, we expanded the whole understanding of prayer. The Apostle Paul said this. He said, pray without ceasing. That's interesting. The contemplatives, Richard Rohr and those guys, and Meister Eckhart and a few others before him said, yeah, it's constant. Prayer is like breathing. It's divine union with love. So maybe more of us are praying than we realize. Now, that said, today what I want to do is I want to talk about a particular type of praying. So in this series, if we're asking the question, is it still meaningful? Can it be transformative practice for us? I wanted to just bring in some elements in ways that I understand prayer, in ways that I still use prayer, because I don't pray like I used to. Okay, I grew up. My father was a Southern Baptist pastor, so I grew up in the church where you prayed for hours. Typically in the morning, you had quiet time. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where you get up and people would have their coffee and then they would read the scriptures. And if you still do all these things, that's great. But then they would pray for a long time. We used to meet in our church on Monday mornings at the start of the work week and get there at like 5 a.m. and be on the altar praying to our God, right? Um, and so I grew up in that. I don't do those things anymore, but there are ways that I have come to understand prayer that I still practice. And so I want to give you one of those ways today, okay? So brace yourself, roll up your sleeves. It's going to be an interesting day, all right? So I just want to give this to you, and you can take it for what it's worth. And if you're like a theologian in here and you're like, totally disagree, just take it up with the biblical narrative, not with me, okay? I want to talk to you about prayer as a practice of lament this morning, okay? So if you're asking me, Pastor, do you still pray? I am a pastor, and I will tell you, I do pray, but my prayer, by and large, a lot of my prayers are simply a practice of lament, okay? So I want to explain to you what that is, and then I just want to offer it to you maybe as a practice that if you want to take that makes you a better human, I hope you take it, okay? So I want to read a couple of verses from you. I want to show you one of those lament prayers from the book of Psalms. If you're unfamiliar with Psalms, the Psalms are an anthology of hymns from ancient Israel. Okay? Psalms are poetry, music, and prayer at the same time. There's 150 chapters in Psalms. And what most people don't know is Psalms is broken into 5 parts, 5 different books that most scholarship says reflects the Torah. All right, so you have the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. That's the Torah. The 5 books of Psalms, sometimes if you're around Psalms, you're like, I'm confused. They said second Psalms or Psalms book 2. What are they talking about? These are the breakdowns that scholarship says is clear, that there are different actual books in Psalms, and they're trying to reflect like parallel with the Torah, right? So those are the breakdowns. I will tell you this, when you talk about lament Psalms in all of these books, you typically have the most evidence of lament Psalms in the first 3 books, right? So if you're looking to like join others and lament a little bit, then go to just the first 3 books. And by and large, most everything you read there is a lament song. You have 4 and 5, book 4 and 5, and you'll find some laments in there, but they're typically a little bit less frequent, all right? You also need to know the most common type of psalm in the book of Psalms is lament psalms, okay? So there are different types of psalms. There's hymns, like full-on songs that the ancient Israelites sang. There are songs of thanksgiving that you pull out for Thanksgiving, right? You know what I'm talking about? There are psalms where they just express gratitude. But by and large, most of the psalms you read are lament psalms. And that's telling today because the Old Testament is filled with lament prayers, yet it seems to be very absent in our culture. Our culture teaches us, conditions us to stuff our pain, wounds, anxiety, fears, anger. You'll hear things like, don't be anxious. Don't be angry. That's not going to get you anywhere good. Hear me when you say that. You are trying to police people's emotions. And has anyone ever gotten frustrated in here when you could not control the way other people feel and or express their feelings? I think it's called social media. Have you heard of this? Someone makes a post and we jump. You can't say that, or they just did. They shared it. They're expressing something. All right? I would argue that most of social media, most of it, is nothing but a platform to lament. And this is why you don't see your pastor going back and forth with people on social media. All right? Are we feeling good? Did I get in preacher mode? Oh my God. All right, here we go. All right. And let me just tell you why. One, the older I get, the more I realize I don't have the energy I used to have. We've talked about that before, and some of you are older than I am. Tell me, how are you standing? I'm not kidding when I tell you I'm at the point in my life now where I'm like, should we take naps at 4? Do you know what I'm talking about? Isn't it interesting? You grow up taking naps, you go through life, and then you get like midway through life, and you're like, can we go back to what we were as children, right? Like, I just don't have the energy. I wish I did. I've tried to eat more to give myself more energy, not helping. I'm now for the first time in my life in the last year started drinking caffeine again. I went years without it. But I was like, I don't know that I can function without caffeine. And now I'm just like all of you people. I'm addicted to it. I'm addicted. And I don't even drink coffee. I hate coffee. The only source of caffeine I have is unsweet tea. Do you know what I'm talking about? Because I hate sweet tea. It's just all too sweet. But I unsweet tea. Now I started out, and that's how the devil works. You know what I'm talking about? You just like, I remember in the Baptist church I grew up in, they used to talk about alcohol, and they would say, I love this so much. I love this. They were teetotalers. Do you know what I'm talking about? And we have AA here for all my AA brothers and sisters. You know how we feel. You also know we're all liberated in here, right? But they used to say things like, first you take the drink, then the drink takes the man. You know what I'm talking about? And I'm like, that's true for everything, all right? You know what I'm talking about? And so it is for my unsweet tea addiction now. I started out, I remember I could just have like a half unsweet tea and I'd be like lit up, and Katie'd be like, man, just slow it down a little bit. Um, I am now 1 year into caffeine every day, and I kid you not, just like yesterday, I woke up and I was on like unsweet tea 4 or 5 going, it's not working anymore. You know what I'm talking about? Like my body's adapted to it, and Katie now very slowly has been going, maybe you should try coffee. Like it's a little stronger intake. I'm like, what? Where does it end? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, are we just gonna keep going, keep going? It's like, have you ever tried crack cocaine? Okay, anyways, this is how it works. What my favorite band is the Killers. You know the Killers, Brandon Flowers. The Killers is the most amazing band. They have a line in one of their songs. It's like, um, you don't have to take a drink right now, but you can dip your feet every once in a little while. And I'm like, oh God, yes. Just get my toe in that caffeine. And yes, yes. All right. Okay. All of that said, um, I have no clue of where we were going with that. And that happens more and more. And it's very frustrating, actually. It's another sign I'm getting old. All right. But all of that said, well, I'll figure it out by the end of the sermon. No, I want to read this psalm to you. All right. It's the book of Psalms. They are, God, they're expressing like full transparency what's happening within them. Okay, so I want to read this to you. These are the Lament Psalms. This is a key understanding and definition. If you're like, what's a practice of lament? So if that's a form of prayer, what is it? What does it look like? I want to give this to you. All right. Now, hang on. If you've never really read the Bible, I'm going to tell you this is one of the reasons I still love it. All right, because I think it's honest. And that's what I love about the Bible. A lot of times you'll see like the platitudes in verses, John 3:16, da 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 da. People write all these beautiful verses. Um, you're probably never going to find a football game or anywhere else where someone has written out Psalm 58. Okay. But it's a psalm like this that makes me love how raw and honest these writers are. So I want to read this to you, okay? And then we'll just kind of walk through it and then I'll make a point. The writer opens with 2 questions and then he just goes for it. Do you indeed decree what is right, you gods or rulers? He's talking to his president. Do you indeed decree what is right, you gods? Do you judge people fairly? No. In your hearts you devise wrongs. Your hands deal out violence on earth. The wicked go astray from the womb. They err from their birth, speaking lies. They have venom like the venom of a serpent, like the deaf adder that stops its ear so that it does not hear the voice of the charmers or of the cunning enchanter. Now, watch what happens. He slowly shifts into talking to the divine, okay? So notice the shift, and then notice his practice of lament. This is these are the kind of prayers that I still get into, okay? Oh God. So when I read this, I'm not just like anyone going, oh God, oh God. No, no, no. I mean, you have to understand, this thing's coming from deep within him. Oh God. Listen to this. Break the teeth in their mouths. Tear out the fangs of the young lions. Oh Lord, let them vanish like water that runs away, like grass, let them be trodden down and wither. Let them be like the snail that dissolves into slime, like the untimely birth that never sees the sun. Sooner than your pots can feel the heat of thorns, whether green or ablaze, may he sweep them away. The righteous will rejoice when they see vengeance done. They will bathe their feet in the blood of their enemies. People will say, surely there is a reward for the righteous, and surely there is a God who judges on earth. You're dismissed. Wow. I hope you feel that prayer. That's called a lament. That's a practice of lament. My question to you today is, have you ever practiced that? Have you ever prayed like that? Is that an occasional thing for you? Is that a regular thing for you? What we have in this particular psalm is a brutally honest prayer that God will make right specific injustices. The words are harsh, and it's here that we get some idea of the depth of suffering by the one praying. This prayer is filled with pain, with rage, and with disappointment and desperation. What you have in the first opening lines are two questions that are most likely sarcastic questions. This is a rebuke addressing the powerful leaders of this writer's time. What he's saying is he's shaking his fist at God in the heavens, going, God, you are responsible for the leaders of our nation, and they're the one creating this injustice. It's the image of rulers. And what the writer is saying is they're like snakes. They're poisonous. They're spreading venom. You ever felt that way about a politician before? He goes on to give this metaphoric picture that even the music of the snake charmer does not stop the venom of the snake because they refuse to listen to anyone's wisdom. Yeah. And then he moves to a petition where he says, oh God, the one praying turns now to God and tells God in a very forceful term, this isn't an ask, this is a petition. It is he is demanding, he or she is demanding exactly what they wish for God to do to their enemies. Come on. I know we're in America. And I know for some of you are like, I did not come to church for this nonsense. We have our stuff together in our house. We do not speak of humans this way. Can I give you a couple of the images? He gives the image of like lions. And he says, may God smash the teeth of lions. What's the image there? To extract their fangs so that they have no more power. You ever watched a cartoon where I used to, Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer is my favorite Christmas show. I love it. One of my favorites. It's up there, top 2 or 3. I mean the classic I'm talking about. You ever go back and watch older movies and you're like, God, that would never fly in our world today. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, they would be so many lawsuits. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is like that to me. I'm like, how harsh, first of all, Santa is in that movie. I mean, it's detrimental to his legacy, okay? He's a harsh human in this one, all right? But, you know, they have the big monster you're talking about. And then, what's his name? The abominable snow. Yeah, that's right. They had this big. They have the just the. He's just a harsh guy. He's got these teeth, and then the one elf is just like, I want to be a dentist. You know, what I mean? And they just wear him down. A dentist. You know what I'm talking about? It's like, God, cut the guy. Yes, a dentist is a very noble task. Like they just look at him like, wait, Herbie wants to be a dentist. You know what I'm talking about? It's like, yeah, he does. What's wrong with that? I'm literally 42 watching this year going, what's the problem, guys? A dentist is a great job to have. They make a lot of money. What's your beef with dentists, right? It's like Herbie wants to be a dentist. Herbie wants to be a dentist. And the whole idea is like Herbie's this outcast, and so is Rudolph. He was this outcast, and so there's a beautiful part to it, but it's really interesting. So the abominable snowman shows up when they back him up in a cave. You know what Herbie does? Oh, all in the moment he's needed. You know what I'm talking about? Like Rudolph was in the moment needed because a snowstorm came in, and they picked on Rudolph. And even Santa doesn't overly like Rudolph, but in the moment just needed to use Rudolph. And that's the real lesson, kids. All right, like. The world doesn't care about you, but if they need you, they'll use you. Happy Sunday. Okay. So, but then Herbie gets up and what does he do? He removes the teeth, right? And all of a sudden, there's no force behind the yell of this monster. That's the image. It's like this guy's just praying, God, like take their power from them. He gives the image of water, the image of flowing water. He's like, evaporate them. Dry them up like a stream. He gives the image of grass beaten down by those who trample. May enough people trample on them that they're just like beat down grass. He gives the image of a snail, one of my personal favorite images, like a slug, and he says, may they dissolve into slime like a snail. That's an interesting prayer. Here's one. This is hard. Maybe there's a trigger warning here. He gives the image of a stillborn baby. And he's so irate that he prays to God, I wish they had never been born, never see the light of day. He gives some image that they probably would have understood a little bit more in their culture, but sweeping them away quicker than pots, I assume, can feel the heat of the fire underneath them. And then he shifts and he just says, God, give us justice. The one praying wants vindication. The cruel idiom of the righteous, check this image out, bathing their feet in the blood of the wicked. This is the image. He's like, I'm not going to be happy or satisfied until my feet are being bathed in their blood. This is an imagery adopted from the military in their time to describe utter defeat. I hope you hear the cry for destruction and disappearance of the oppressors. This is what we call a lament. Kathleen O'Connor wrote a fantastic book on laments, and she said this, lamentation names what is wrong, what is out of order in God's world, what keeps human beings from thriving in all their creative potential. That's a practice of lamentation. Now, here's what I want to give you. You're here and you're like, I don't pray. I would challenge you and encourage you and offer you to join me in having a regular practice of lament. I'm not asking you to believe there's some magical, mythical God in the sky that's going to change your outcomes. That's not the prayer we're talking about. I'm asking you to just join me to have moments, regular moments, where you pause and you express, you lament whatever it is that's inside of you. So I would say prayer for me is like this. Prayer can be ripping your heart open and giving language to that which lurks inside your internal universe. Prayer can be recognizing and naming the anger, rage, joy, pain within you. Prayer can be a practice of moving what is internal and invisible within you, moving it to the external. Prayer can be making visible what lies invisible within you. Prayer can help us get at the internal universe, the subconscious, the unconscious that we can't seem to see. Like a healthy practice of lament could be pulling all of that stuff, allowing it to surface and making it visible. And Lamont said this, if you say to God, I am exhausted and depressed beyond words, and I don't like you at all right now, and I recoil from most people who believe in you. That might be the most honest thing you've ever said. If you told me you had said to God, it is all hopeless, and I don't have a clue if you exist, but I could use a hand, it would almost bring tears to my eyes, tears of pride in you for the courage it takes to get real, really real. You might shout at the top of your lungs or whisper into your sleeve, I hate you, God. Yeah, that is a prayer too, because it's real. It is truth. And maybe it is the first sincere thing you've had in months. You've heard me say this a lot because I think it's a fundamental truth that floats around our collective. Perhaps we could even call it a value. But honest or healthy spirituality is always an honest spirituality. I want you to take that with you. A healthy spirituality is always an honest spirituality. And the reason I bring that to your attention, because I think most churches, by and large, and I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush here, by and large, most spiritual collectives in our world today don't really create space for an honest spirituality. By and large, you go to churches, you sit in there, you're dressed your best, you smell your best, you act your best, you come in, and you walk through the door, and there's usually someone greeting you that's had way too much caffeine. And it's like extrovert level on extrovert level, and they're all sometimes, this is just places I've visited, and it's just like they're smiling, and it's like, why? Like, I'm not smiling today. I'm in this smile. And then, and then it's like the musician gets up or in this case, the pastor, and the opening words, good morning, everybody, with a smile. And you're like, no, that's just not good for me, actually. But we expect, it's just like we put this on display. And then what begins to happen subtly, if you don't harbor or create a space for honest spirituality, I'll tell you what begins to happen. One word, performance. And this is, you want to talk about burnout and what would drain your soul, is if every Sunday we gathered and it became more about performance than anything. I could never pastor this church if I couldn't honestly be honest with you all. If I had to dress up and perform every Sunday, I wouldn't last very long. I just don't have that kind of energy in me. But one of the things I love about Vinings Lake is you all have created a safe space to be honest. And I love that about this collective. Yes, you come right as you are, but you can be honest about where you are. And not every place is a safe space. Not every person is a safe person. Have you ever struggled with this? Now, I want to give you some examples here, okay? How are we feeling? Are we good? Yeah, we're good. All right, if you're visiting, you're like, are we? We should be done. I didn't tell you this. This isn't a Methodist church, all right? I went to a Methodist school, Emory, and in a Methodist school, they're like 15-minute homilies. This is an ever-evolving spiritual collective. We go hours, all right? So, because the pastor's a narcissist and he loves to hear himself. All right, so can I give you two examples of this? And I'm just giving this to you. I hope it's a helpful practice. I'm giving it to you. Can I give you two? One, Jim and Nick's barbecue, okay? Are y'all familiar with Jim and Nick's? Do y'all like Jim and Nick's? It's good. I mean, Atlanta has a solid barbecue scene if you're looking for it. All right, Heirloom Barbecue. There's amazing places around Atlanta. Sweet Auburn. Oh, that's a good one too. We should talk. Okay. But Jim and Nick's just right down here. My wife and I, we go there every now and then. I love it. They got their half chicken's amazing. Got salad. It's just fantastic, And so this was maybe like a month ago. Maybe 2 months ago. Katie called me and she's like, "Hey, I didn't have time to make dinner." And then she's like, "Where do you want to eat?" And it tends to always land on my shoulders because she doesn't eat a lot, and I'm the one I like to eat as many meals as I possibly can. And I'm like, "Well, let's just go to Jim and Nick." She's like, "Okay." So I meet her there. I sit down, and when I walked in the door, before she said a word, she told the server, she's like, "Hey, what do you have on draft?" And my wife does not drink beer, and so he said something about, he went through the list. He's like, "Bring one of those." And I hadn't not said a word. And I was like, "Oh, what?" And then she's like, "I can just tell you need one." And so I'm like, but then it dawned on me, I was like, well, at least she didn't order a bourbon. All right. So there's levels here. So maybe something good's happening where she looked at me, she's like, he needs a drink, but he doesn't need one of those drinks. All right. So it's, and then I realized, oh my God, I'm wearing this, apparently. You know what I'm talking? You ever had one of those days where your partner knows, because intuitively they just know, but then they can see it? Ooh, boy, I've been able to see it on people before. I've seen it on some of y'all. All right. You come in here on Sunday, like, "Happy Sunday." You're like, mm-hmm. And on Sunday, I get to look at all of you all right now. And even now, I look at you all, and it's hard for me not to just judge. Okay. What kind of week are they having? Yeah. And I love it. I'm here for it. This is honest spirituality. And so I'm sitting there in front of Katie, and sure enough, it comes, and I'm a quarter way into it, and I can feel a little bit of loosening, just a little bit. And there's all kinds of conversation I had. You don't want dependence on things like that. Absolutely, that's a whole nother sermon. Okay, feel losing, and then it dawned on me. Oh, I'm in front of a safe. This is my wife. We've been married over 20 years. There is no person safer than this human in front of me right now. And this isn't uncommon. I go through spells of it, but I decided I need to lament right now. And sometimes you need to lament like to the divine, to the universe, to love, to world. Sometimes you need to lament to an actual face in front of you. You know what I'm talking about? So that's why I encourage you to go to therapy. You can pay people to listen to you. It's a beautiful thing, right? But you don't have to pay people too. Sometimes, like, this is what I love about Vinings Lake. We're all here for each other. I thought about this the other day. We shouldn't take this for granted. We get emails all the time since that article where people wish to God they live close so they could be a part of this collective. I need you to understand that. I don't take that for granted. And I need you to hear this. There are a few places like Vinings Lake. I don't just say that because I'm the pastor, although I am, all right? But this little unicorn space is special. It really is. And the fact that we get to do all this together in a community, lots of people don't have that. And so every time I gather, I'm like, thank you. Those are the words, thank you. And so there are people in here. This is why I encourage you, go out afterwards, meet people. Don't just come and show up. Go find someone and go out with them. And then what you'll find is you'll start to find your people. You're safe. These are your people. Safe space. Oh my God, you listen to that podcast? I listen to that podcast. You read that book? You read that book. By and large, most people find us because like we have people come in, authors, and they're like a beacon that goes off and it draws people like, what do you mean you had Peter Rollins, the philosopher? Oh my God, if you had that at a church, that's my kind of place. Yep, come on. We're your people. I'm your people. Let's do this. Katie's in front of me. I'm like, she's safe. Now, I want to pause here and say, before you go lamenting to someone, make sure you know they're safe. Okay? That's important. Now, if you're here and you say, I don't know if they're safe, let me help you. They're not. Okay? If you hear this word from the man of God, and I've never used that phrase, I think, till now. Okay? If you have reservation that someone is safe, they're not safe. And if you still have reservation, test it. We okay? Test it. Here's what I mean. Give them a tidbit of information, see if it comes back to you. Can I let you know insight? I'm a pastor. I have to be careful who I talk to, so I just say it publicly now. But when I'm really like lamenting, I have to be careful because you can't just lament to anybody because that can get you in some trouble. But every now and then I'm like, I think that person's safe, but I'm not sure. So I'll give a test. I'll say something that's kind of secretive, like deep within me. I'll spit it out. And then usually like 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, someone else comes to me and I hear back and I'm like, not safe. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, see, it's easy. This isn't challenging, all right? It's not challenging, all right? So here's what I'm saying. If you're here and you're like, I don't have a safe space, email us. If you're like, I don't have a space, I need a safe space. We're going to try to help you find some safe people, all right? I will tell you, there are lots of safe people in this room. I know. I have borne my soul to some of you, and you will die with it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Those are your people. Your people that will go to the grave with your deepest, darkest secret. Yes, come on. That's the kind of spirituality I want to be a part of, all right? Now, all that said, Katie's one of them. So I had just had, one of those weeks where no one listened. And here's what I mean. I break it down therapy. I had one of those weeks where it occurred to me I can't control anyone. Do you know what I'm talking about? Now, what I had said in the moment was, I'm so angry I can't control them. No, that's a high level of conscience. What I said in the moment was, I'm so frustrated that, and I name them. Do you know what I'm talking about? Woo, do I name them? And relax, none of you were named, okay? But I name them. Like, this is like deeply family, personal stuff. I start naming, and then so-and-so, and then so-and-so did this, and can you believe they wronged us like this? And then that person went over there and said that, right? And I mean, it's just go, and then you're at Jim and Nick's, by the way, where families are together just trying to have a meal, and I am just like, just getting try it. All I'm saying is try it. I want you to know this. It's the most liberating thing to lament. Just get it all out. Now, I do want to tell you this too. Be careful when you do it over and over again to your partner back and forth. That can wear you down. One of the things my wife and I have learned is it's okay to lament every now and then, but it's really good to have a therapist because sometimes the partner has to lament too. And it gets really interesting when you're both lamenting at the same time. Okay? And also, it's a lot to carry. So that's where therapy comes into me. One of the ways therapy comes into me. But I sat here and lamented, and I gave it all. And I had an interesting experience. It was not pretty. I want you to know that. This isn't like, oh, this is a nice lament, Cody. No. If you had walked up on us, you'd be like, he is not my pastor. I don't know who that guy is, but that is not the spiritual man that I need. No, that was not in that moment. I mean, I was not. And quite frankly, you start, like, the server comes over, and I'm like, are you judging right now? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'm just going, I mean, if you walk in the door, it's like it's on. You know what I'm talking about? And I'm just, but something strange began to happen. As I started getting out, probably the first time it's ever happened, I started feeling lighter. It was really weird. I walked out of Jim and Nick's, and I only had one drink, so it wasn't that. I walked out of Jim and Nick's, and I felt better. Now, Katie walked out going, thanks. It was the meal that I wanted on a Monday. I felt better. I was like, maybe we're on to something here. No. There was a show. I think it's still out. Maybe Netflix. I don't know what it is. It's called Shrinking. You ever heard this? And it's basically like a show about this therapist. And Katie was like, you need to watch this. And I'm like, okay. Loved it. It's fantastic. There's a part in the show where, and I don't want to give it all away, but someone they really love dies. And they're trying to get it out. And they don't know how. And so the therapist recommends what therapist calls worry time or grief time, where it's intentional grieving. And so what you have in the show is that the daughter begins to set out 15 minutes every day where she gets alone, shuts the door, and she just intentionally gets it out. All right? Now, to set the mood, because sometimes it's hard to get in that mood, she would get the, like, saddest music ever, put her headphones on, and just weep. So she did something that's really interesting and countercultural for a lot of us. Instead of running away and trying to numb from the pain, anger, rage, disappointment, she ran further into the pain, rage, anger, disappointment. And instead of trying to numb it to not feel it, my God, may we get this. She ran further into feeling it. And she let that feeling just come to the surface and work its way out. Now, tell all that to say this. When I watched that movie, Katie knew exactly what she was doing. She's like, "Did you see that?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Worry time, lament time, crying time." Yes, it's an intentional moment. That's what happens to you when you run. I was like, "Oh my God, this has never dawned on me." I started seeing a therapist years ago. Actually, first person I saw was Kent years ago. And I called Kent. He's going to be here in January. And I called him and I said, "Kent, I need some help." He's like, "What's the problem?" I was like, "I go on these runs. So I run every day. And then I go on long runs on Fridays if the weather's nice, 15 miles. It's like 2.5 hours, okay? On my best days, it's two. Anyways, none of you care. Okay. Um, but I'm getting ready to cross 10,000 miles. So this year I ran 2,000. All right. Hold your applause. Okay. Nothing like declaring I ran 2,000 miles this year and you get a sitting ovation. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, oh, it's great. Good for you. Okay. It's wonderful. Got 10,000 miles, and we were like, "No, listen, I hear you. I felt the way you felt about what I just said for years. I didn't start running until 5 years ago. I always despised runners. Honestly, I thought runners were like insecure narcissists because they would have to place their mileage on the back of their car. You know what I'm talking about? You ever seen this like 26.3 or 26.1 or whatever? And I'm just like, oh, they just need an applause or a horn, like, oh, good for you, 26.1. And I was just like, I don't get it and I don't understand it, but it's great if it's your thing. And then I started running, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I had a runner's high. I began to experience it. It was amazing. And now it's what I do. You go to the gym, you do your thing. I go. Some of you like sit down and have your coffee and pray and read. Great. I go for a run. That's what I do. And years ago, I started having this experience. I would go for a run, and I started. It would just it kind of surface. I would just start weeping, and I can't explain it, but there's this deep, deep sadness. And I remember when I called Kent and I said, "Kent, something's happening." And he said, "What's going on?" I said, "I go out for my runs and I just start weeping." He said to me, he's like, "Well, Cody, what are you thinking about?" That's a good question. You ever tried to think about your thinking? Have you ever tried to observe your thoughts? First of all, that's weird. That also shows you that who you are is not who you think you are, because you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. God, we're getting Eckhart Tolle in here. Y'all feel that? Yes. You can observe your thoughts. And so I started trying to observe my thoughts. He's like, just observe your thoughts and see what you're thinking about that causes them. The only problem is when I started observing my thoughts, I became so consumed with observing my thoughts that I never felt the emotion again because I wasn't thinking about what I was thinking about. Does that make sense? So it's like somehow I've got to observe my thoughts, but not break the pattern of the thoughts. Welcome to my therapy session, by the way, to which my therapist is like, "You're making me dizzy, right?" I'm like, "I know, me too, right?" Meta, 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 meta is down in there, right? And so I started observing my thoughts. And I observed them, I'm like, oh my goodness. Like all these, I noticed when I started tearing up, I started thinking about the death of my spouse who's perfectly healthy. I started thinking about her dying. I started thinking about my life without her, that it is inevitable. We're all going to die. A lot about death. And then I started thinking about all the people that have left Vinings Lake along the way. Truth. Most of you here just got here. And I love you. You're my favorite group. And I mean those words, actually. There were some versions before that were not my favorite. Okay. But I have to tell you, as a pastor, one of the hardest things, it's one of the hardest tasks is falling in love with people and watching them leave. But I also know our collective is like a school. Some of you come, you're here for a season, you graduate, and you leave. Well done. I had somebody recently who I love dearly just said, "Hey, we're leaving VL." And I'm like, "Wait, why?" And they said this, "Well, we've just been listening to our internal guide and we feel like it's time for us to move." And a part of me was like, "Oh, but you're one of the good ones." The other part of me, this is what I did. "What are you doing?" "Well, you just got your diploma." You're actually doing the very thing we hope we're teaching you to do. You said, I'm listening to my internal guide and I feel it's time to move on. Oh my God. You do understand that's a win for our small organization. Follow that guide. Okay? Now, all of that, I am weeping. Hundreds and hundreds of people have come in VL and walked out of VL. And some I love so much. And some of it was so painful. And as I'm running, some of these images of them are coming to my, and I start telling Kent this. I'm like, it's like something's, and I start telling him, he's like, Cody, that's called grief. And then I'm sitting here watching this show with Katie, and she says that. And let me tell you what I've done now. My hypnotherapist helped me with this. Now, I have turned all of my runs into a practice of lament. And it's bonus. I'm getting my body healthier, and I'm also getting my soul healthier. And so I go out for a run. Can I just tell you I hope you do this. This is for you, and then we're out of here, okay? Sometimes I have to set it up so it's intentional. And I have my headphones in. I set the mood. That's what we do in this space, by the way. If you don't know that, the Zorza creative team, geniuses. They're coming in here, they're like, we got to set the mood. I'm like, what's that mean? From the time you walk in to here, these lights are dim for a reason. We're setting the mood, right? This is a romantic dinner. Got one light here, set it. You got to feel it, right? So you have to set the mood sometimes. So let me tell you what I'll do. I go out for my run. I start, and about like a quarter of the mile into the first mile, I'm like, okay, here we go. And it's not that I force it. You don't force it. You'll know when it's there. You'll know when it's there. Your body will guide you there. Listen to your body. It will guide you there. So I put it, and it was like, what do I want to listen to today? That's usually the first sign. What are you feeling? You wake up in the morning. Anybody else get tired of the same old songs over and over and over again that you listen to, and you're looking for new recommendations, right? That's why I love like playlists, people's playlists. I go, what's your playlist? What you listen to? By and large, I love depressing music. That may shock some of you because you think I'm the energetic, like spiritual guy, like, woo, Jesus saves. Okay. I'm not. I'm not. You're not looking at that guy. I do. I love dark, depressing movies. I love sad movies. Can I recommend one for you if you want to lament or grieve? American Symphony. Have you heard of this fellow by the name of John Baptiste? John Baptiste was a musician on the Colbert Show, which Colbert is, he's up there in the Trinity, if you believe in that, all right? But John Baptiste left the Colbert Show, and he was tasked to do the American Symphony. And so he started like a documentary filming his task. Meanwhile, his wife gets cancer, okay? Just go watch it. It's on Netflix or something, okay? Bring your tissues. Bring them. It's the greatest demonstration of love I think I've ever seen portrayed outside of the biblical narrative itself. Fact. And if I knew John Baptiste, we'd get him here, but I don't know. So if you know him, let's talk after, okay? But I love stuff like that. I love it. Sad. I don't know what it is. I used to worry about myself. Like, why am I depressed? You ever heard depressed? And then you ever done this? You ever cried? People cry. I have people right back in the back. I'll go back there. I'll meet you and you'll come. And then you'll just start weeping. I don't even know you. You'll start weeping, which tells me immediately that they're safe. Thank God. It's a safe space. Start weeping. And then you'll say something like this. I'm so sorry. Whoa. Don't ever apologize. You don't have to apologize for anyone when you express your emotions. Isn't it weird how natural this was? I'm sorry. Nope. Sorry for what? Being a human? Sorry for having an emotion? So I dial it up. Sad movies, sad music. I do. Katie does, well, I was going to say laugh at me, but mocks me occasionally, okay? She's like, you do it to yourself. I'm like, I'm just following the Spirit. I'll turn it up. It depends on what it is. Sometimes I'll put in, the saddest songs. You ever heard this group REM? Remember them? Everybody hurts, right? Like, what do you listen to, Pastor, when you run? everybody hurt, right? That is me doing circles in my neighborhood on a Monday morning, weeping, right? I just gave a full sermon about, hey, I believe in the restoration, renewal of all things. God's going to make all things right Monday morning. Everybody hurts, right? I mean, I get it as depressing as I can. I'm not a big country guy, but there is one musician I love. His name is Chris Stapleton. Have you ever heard of this guy? What a voice does that man is. Whew, he was built different. And he sings some song about sometimes I just want to cry. I'm not even a country guy, but I'm like, oh my God, I can see why people like country. Because I'm like, yes, yes, give me a dog and a shotgun and just let me cry with a whiskey. You know what I'm talking about? Like, like that's the, yes, yes. I'll tell you one more. You want to dial it up? I'm giving you help to set the mood for your practice of lament. Billie Eilish. Do you know Billie Eilish? Woo! She has one song from the Barbie movie. I don't even know what it's called, but I want to tell you right now, man, that one just gets in me and just pull. Yeah, and for some reason I love depressing female singers. They're my favorite of all the musicians. I love it. I love it. I'm proud, I'm not ashamed to say this. I love a good Kelly Clarkson song. Do you know what I'm talking about? One where she sings about her ex-husband and she's just, God, yes, bring that. Yes. Yes. So I'll put it on. I'll dial it up. And it's not long. It's not long. If you were to run up on me or drive up on me, you'll start singing, here it comes. Here it comes. And then I'll just crank it. And I will not, I used to fight it. You ever fought your emotions? Your lips? Or you feel the knot in your throat? You're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't. As if it's something bad. Isn't it interesting how we're programmed? As if it's something bad, you shouldn't cry. You should. No, I don't even resist it anymore. Oh, by the way, I learned this too. You know that feeling in your throat when you're about to cry? You know what that is? I did not know this. It is your muscles tightening up, restricting your ability to cry. So it's almost like when you feel that muscle, you're already resisting the natural emotion. So what if you just stopped? And I have to stop because I'm running. And I don't know if you know this, but running and crying together should be an Olympic sport, okay? You cannot breathe at all. Restricting. And you just open it up, open it up, open it up. Let it flow. Get it out. And so sometimes it's weeping. Sometimes it's anger. You know what I'll do for that one? Cue up a little Tupac, Hit 'Em Up. Are you familiar with Hit 'Em Up? Do you know this song? You all should leave today and don't do that. Okay, don't do that. You will never come back to Vinings Lake again. I don't know what it is. I grew up on Tupac. I Hit 'Em Up is rage music for me. He's mad at Notorious B.I.G. He's so angry, and he just uses every expletive you could. And I'm going to be honest, I say most of the words, too, when I sing it. I go for it. And what's funny is as I'm going for it, there is an image of someone. Do you know what I'm talking about? He's talking about Big. I'm talking about somebody else. And I'm just like, all I'm saying is get it out, the rage, the anger, whatever it is. And this is why I'm telling you, when I run into people, God, we've got to close, and I feel like y'all are just getting going, okay? This is why when I pull up with someone and I hear, and I get, and my windows are rattling. So you know when you're getting old, you're like, turn down the music. I don't do that anymore. I'll tell you what I do. I roll down my window. What are they in? Because they're clear they're living in their own world right now. And I'll look over. And sometimes you can't see it all because it's just black window tint. And I'm like, I don't even know what's going on in there, but I want to get in your vehicle, all right? And then my favorite ones when you pull up beside someone and it looks like they are doing the concert. Do you know what I'm talking about? You ever pulled up beside someone and it's like there's a ballad going on and they are getting it. And sometimes, I don't want to embarrass them, but sometimes I will go. But when I hear just like these boom, boom, can I tell you what first things? This is always the case, but I'll tell you what comes to mind. Oh, that's a practice of lament. The louder it is, the harder it is. Maybe the more pain there is. Maybe, maybe not. And so here's what I do now. I set a practice of lament every morning. I'll do it tomorrow morning. Got a meeting at 9:30, probably run about 8. Headphones in, go. All right, we went way over. I'll just say this to you. Why is it important? Why is it important? Because if our pain is not expressed, it will inevitably be transferred. When you give it language and you drag it up, it's no longer down in you. And I hope you hear this morning. Expressing your pain is one step toward releasing your pain. We need a healthy practice of lament. And so this morning, I hope you take that. And maybe tomorrow, you start for the first time a healthy practice of lament. Okay. Friends, I'm so glad you're here. If this is your first time here, thank you for being with us. I'm going to be right over here, and I would love, love, love to meet you and just say thanks for you joining us and being a part of our gathering this morning. For the rest of you, we'll be here next Sunday. And I want to give you another insight into how I understand prayer as an energetic exchange between humans. Okay, so we'll get into that. I do hope that you have a fantastic day. Whatever you walked into the room with, I hope you crank up the music on the way out and you begin to let out what is within you. All right, Bonnings Lake, peace be with you. We'll see you next Sunday.